Well, good morning. Cindy Eriks here with Eriks Environmental Consulting, and I wanted to explain some things to you today. I want to start with your mold assessment report in the state of Florida. You are required under the 468 statutes, if you have mold that exceeds 10 square feet, which that happens pretty quickly, pretty easily. Sometimes the size of a quarter spot of mold, once you open it up, turns out more than 10 square feet. I've seen it all the time. All the time. I've been in business for 22 years this month. 32 years this month, but 22 years specializing in mold and moisture intrusion problems in buildings. So I want to explain to you how to understand your mold assessment report, the mold assessment itself, and discuss a little bit about selecting your remediator. So thank you for watching. Appreciate that a lot. We're based in Tallahassee, Florida, and we do service other areas, basically the panhandle of Florida and South Georgia, and occasionally some other areas we've traveled to when asked. Tennessee, Virginia, but mostly in the Tallahassee and surrounding area, 150-mile radius basically. But anyway, if you called for a mold inspection or assessment in the state of Florida, the licensing, there's two licenses in the mold-related services. One is a mold assessor that does an inspection and tests and writes a protocol report that the state licensed mold remediator can follow in order to perform your mold remediation on your home, or your office, or commercial building. The state requires that the mold assessor and the mold remediator not be the same person, even if the person did the assessment for free. It doesn't matter. It can't be the same person saying what needs to be done and then doing what needs to be done. It's against the law, and there are many, many, many mold remediators giving free inspections so that they can remediate your property. Now, I'm here to tell you that some of those free inspections that have resulted in estimates of $5,000 to $10,000, we get called in sometimes. People kind of get clued in that there might be a problem or something, and they call for an assessment, and we have found out in some instances that there wasn't even a mold problem at all. So anyway, you need to educate yourself about what the statute says. Don't just take my word for it. Look up the statute in the 468 section of the Florida statutes and begin to understand. There's some exceptions in there that are a little bit gray, but contractors can perform some mold remediation. But I'm here to tell you, unless the contractor has been through some good mold remediation training, they're not going to know what to do to protect your property. Because if you have mold, for instance, at your kitchen sink, and most of the time if you have mold at your kitchen sink, it's some really nasty mold, what the media calls black toxic mold. It's really nasty mold. And if the person doing the work, or the handyman, or the contractor starts doing the work and tearing that out without a proper containment, so that the mold spores stay in that space and don't go out into your HVAC system or into any other rooms in your house, then you can end up with another $10,000 to $20,000 in cleanup costs, because the person that removed the damaged materials didn't know what they were doing. And I'm seeing many contractors saying, oh, I could do that, I've been doing that for 40 years. Well, 40 years ago we didn't know how dangerous mold was to your health. But now we do, and now there's protocols. And the protocols must be followed completely. So when you get your mold protocol report, you need to read every single page. There's a lot of pages. Most companies will have a lot of pages to their reports. However, let me just say this. Our report has pages that on every single page there's important information that is digestible to the average person most of the time. Sometimes people have a little trouble with it, but I've seen other mold assessment reports that are same amount of pages, but they're like textbook chapters or large sections that, just common people like you and me can't understand. I can't understand some of it sometimes, okay? I've had mold remediators send me a protocol and say, well, what does this say? I can't even tell sometimes what the problem is, okay? Because there's no pictures attached to it sometimes. Like, I can't even tell what the problem is, and I can't tell what they're saying the solution is. So, you just need to really watch out. Get a sample report. Get a sample assessment report before you have an assessment. And that'll be really helpful. We have a sample report that we provide to people. They occasionally ask for it, right? So in our assessment, we usually need access to the entire home or that section of the building if it's a commercial property, whatever section is included in the HVAC system, because mold spores frequently will, buildings breathe and they interact with themselves, so mold spores move around. If they're a wall cavity or they're in a floor cavity but underneath the kitchen sink, for instance, or break room sink, or air conditioner, by the way. A lot of times air conditioners leak and then it causes wetness on the drywall, which anything that gets wet's got to be removed right away. And people just put fans on it and blow the mold all over the place, cross-contaminating everything, and then spray it with bleach. No, no. And then paint over it with kilts and paint. No, no. That's not the way to do it. We see that over and over and over again in apartment house living, and tenant landlord properties. We see that a lot. Even if they've done that, we can still find some mold most of the time. We can find that there was mold there. Not always, but most of the time. So anyway, you need to know that your report is going to it's going to encompass, every place we've been. So we're going to go in every room, look under every sink, near any water source, and get moisture readings to see if there's any elevated moisture, any reason for concern for a wall cavity, for instance. So we're going to go and we're going to take humidity readings, sometimes thermal imaging, they call it moisture mapping, moisture readings, humidity. We'll take photographs of the places that we've been, certainly the places that we see a problem, because our eyes, we can tune into something. It's like, we know there's mold behind there, when somebody else, like your home inspector, might not have picked up on it because it's just not what they do. They're not tuned into it. Other people are not tuned into it. We've been doing this, thousands of jobs for a long time. So anyway, you're going to get in your report, you're going to get pictures of, like I just said, of the front of the house, but then of the other areas, like I said. And then you're going to get a description of, why we were asked to come out there. Sometimes people just need it checked because they're concerned about it, or they're buying a new house and they want to know if there's any problems. So, which we see a lot of problems in house purchases, existing house purchases, where everything looks beautiful but stuff is hidden. People are hiding stuff like crazy these days. But we have ways of finding it. I can't promise you we'll always find it, but we have ways of finding it. And so we'll list out that on the very front of the report, and then after that, the visual observations that we saw while we were there, the things that we observed, and then there'll be a whole page of the sampling that we took. And then for that sampling, attached to the end of the report would be the laboratory analysis, because we overnight the samples to a lab, independent lab. They analyze it, send it to us, the report, and then we read the report and we look at all the factors, everything that we saw, every complaint that was made, what the test results were, and we compile that together to provide your protocol. And so we'll have a conclusion after that, a general conclusion, usually a wrap-up of it that just has a small summary. And then after that, you'll see your mold protocol if you have a mold problem. Now, if you don't have a mold problem, it's just going to be, the conclusion is just going to be no, that we didn't see any visual problems. The samples came back in normal range. In the southeast region of the United States, of course, including Tallahassee and the Florida Panhandle, we have a moist, humid environment. So mold grows really quickly, and there's mold in the outside air. So there's always going to be some mold inside the interior space. but it should be pretty low, right? It should be, they're going to be there, but it should be pretty low. So it's elevated mold that we're looking for, not no mold, because it's unlikely you're going to have 0. So, but we would say that it doesn't happen that often. If someone's calling us to inspect for mold, most of the time we're going to find some. There's going to be some because they've seen some evidence, or there's been a water damage that wasn't properly taken care of. Frequently, water damage, insurance companies will send out drying companies, and they will just put fans on everything, and they won't remove the wet materials. So note this: if your sheetrock gets wet, tear it out, remove it instantly. If the carpet and pad get wet, pull it out, get it outside. Dry the carpet outside if you want to try to save it. Throw the pad away, and then put a dehumidifier in place to dry your subfloors. If it's a wood subfloor, it would go down into the crawl space, and that's going to need to be inspected and probably dried out before it starts growing mold, because that's very common. In any event, I think I have a video on that. If not, I will have one soon that goes into more detail about what to do in the event of a water loss. And I do have a couple of videos that show about these moisture detection, where you can place them every place where moisture could be, and it sends off a high decibel alarm. I have the 2 types in my home. One's a Bluetooth type, and it's a super loud siren sound in the house, and the other one is a small sound, but it's a high decibel at in small locations. So the best thing you can do is get to that water as soon as it starts to leak, and to check in on the property if you're not there for a while, right? Have cameras with sound so you can hear if you hear any of those alarms going off. So anyway, your report's going to have, our visual observations, the laboratory, the conclusions, general conclusions, and then your mold protocol. And the mold protocol is going to be very detailed. It's going to say what areas need to be contained. Your remediator must know how to contain a property, how to contain it. Containing an area is having this heavy plastic seal, like say it was this section right here. They would put plastic all the way across from one wall to the next and totally seal it with a heavy, like a Gorilla Tape, to the walls. You may damage the paint on the existing walls and the ceiling. That's just going to happen. That's going to have to be part of the repair process. That gets totally sealed. Sometimes they'll cut in a HEPA air filter to keep the pressure from pulling on the tape, pulling the tape away. And then there's a HEPA air scrubber that goes inside the containment and then gets vented to the outside. That's negative air, so that you don't cross-contaminate into other areas of the house. HEPA air scrubber goes in that space, a dehumidifier goes in that space. Outside of the containment, that plastic barrier, is a HEPA air scrubber and a dehumidifier. And if you need dehumidifiers in any other areas of the house because you've had to shut down the HVAC system, because the HVAC system is involved, it has mold in it, it's going to need to be cleaned, then that needs to be, you need to climate control. You need to keep that humidity at 50% throughout the whole house during the whole project, even if you're only working on one section and plus the HVAC, or even if you're not working on the HVAC, that has to be sealed off in the room you're working on. So it'll describe those are called engineering controls. Containment, seal it completely off, negative pressure, so you're drawing anything nasty, bad mold, out of the space, outside. Okay? Sometimes it's not possible because of the way rooms are configured and buildings are configured, but we come up with other solutions for that, and we're always glad to talk to your remediator about the way we write the report. We're not perfect. Like, we don't know everything, and we don't have every great idea, okay? I know that. But sometimes your remediator will say, well, look, we might be able to do this better, and it also might save the consumer some money in the process. We're open for that. Just have your remediator call us. Okay? There's a lot of remediators right now that are not trained. I said that before. So anyway, it has all the remove the materials. And it's always remove the materials 2 feet beyond anything you can see. But what frequently happens, I'm talking 99% of the time, that sheetrock will get removed where you know that there's mold on it, And then they'll look inside and say, oh wow, it goes far. And it even goes into the next room because we can see the backside of the sheetrock into the next room. So now they got to stop, go into the next room, build a containment, probably a good 6 to 8 feet out from that wall, and contain that area, because that sheetrock's going to need to come out too, which is why your initial estimate that you get from your remediator will not include the additional damage that's going to be found. And there's almost always additional damage. So just count on it. Count on there being more damage. I don't know what percentage, dollars, dollar-wise, that you should think about, but I would say, consider 25% more cost for additional damage, because it happens. Sometimes it's not that much at all. Sometimes it's just, oh, we have to go all the way down this wall and all the way down to that way on this wall. So we need to add the containment, and we need to just take out the rest of that wall. Sheetrock's not very expensive, okay? It's not that very expensive to pull out. Bag inside the containment, and then double bag, seal it off completely before it gets removed from the premises. The best way to remove it from the premises is through a door that's right there, or a window that's right there. Often you're using the window for your negative pressure. So, those are options. But if not, you take it through the house. If you have to take it through the house or building or apartment, frequently they'll set up a decontamination chamber, so they have a zipper door, and they go into a room that's a containment that has a HEPA air scrubber in it, and they go into that, zipper that off, let them, they probably take off their suit at that point in time, and then go out into the living space that's not under containment and take it out the door. But things like that, it changes for every property based on the design of the property. And so, but you have to know this, right? So you have to know what to expect on your project so that you can know whether your remediator is doing the right thing or not, okay? We can't expect you to become an assessor overnight or anything like that. If you read your report and if there's something you don't understand, please call us. We'll be glad to talk to you about it. We want you to know what's going on and what's expected. And so, after all of the remediation protocol, which will be like wiping down every surface with an antimicrobial, sometimes it's HEPA vacuum it, wipe it with an antimicrobial, and right before they're finished, HEPA vacuum it one more time, and then let the HEPA air scrubber set for 24 to 48 hours before we come in and we test and inspect the space. Now, no one except the mold remediator should be allowed to be in that contained space. Owners, occupants, not allowed to breach containment because it could cross-contaminate and cost the owner of the property more money. The remediator will bill you if you disrupt and cause problems because you want to see what it looks like, okay? Don't be that curious. Don't be that curious. You can be curious at the very end after we have come in to inspect it and sample, and then you can take a peek inside after we've done that. So our samples are all sealed up and we don't have to worry about any cross-contamination of any kind. Please don't get so curious, because that space has to be totally controlled by your mold remediator. And you have to trust your mold remediator. And there are many untrustworthy mold remediators out there, but there are a few really good ones, okay? So you'll have the mold remediation protocol, and then it's like 3 pages attached to that on every job, this has to be the way it is. And at the very end of that section, it'll say what we expect the samples to return as when the job is finished. So when you get your report and you see your lab report and you're looking at your mold levels and you don't understand them, because it took me years to understand how to read a lab report, you take the lab report and you compare it to what our expectations are at the end of the mold remediation. So that'll be deep in the report. That'll be way in the report, okay? After the pictures, after the labs, there's 3 pages that describe what we expect on every single mold remediation project. And we also attach an indoor air quality and humidity guide, which will help you, keep your house, I don't want to say mold free, but just really limit your exposure and give you some information that will really help you to manage your indoor environment. We also have many other videos on our website, indoorairqualitymatters.com. You can go check out. We're big on prevention. I'd rather have you not ever have to call me for a mold problem. I'd rather have you know what to do and get it taken care of right away. But there are times when people do need to call us. So you need to choose your remediator, and I would recommend that your remediator has worked in Tallahassee. If you're from Tallahassee, they have worked in your town for 5 or more years with some personal references. There's a ton of mold remediators and assessors getting licensed. I have no idea how they're being licensed because we're seeing some of their work and they don't have a clue what they're doing. And it's not rocket science. It is not rocket science. So you're going to have to know your protocol report, and you got to know whether your mold remediator is doing the right thing or not. Okay? So I hope this was helpful to you. If you have your report, you've read through it, you've watched this video, if you have any questions at all, you always feel free to call us. I've got a corny thing I say is that once you're our customer, you're always our customer. And you can always feel free to call on us. We're there to help you. Our company motto is that we care. We really care about you and your family, your loved ones, your business associates. And so we want the right thing done on every single project, every single time. God bless you, and have a great day.